Some machines are called trucks only because they still touch the road. One drags wounded tanks out of war zones. One turns a 600 horsepower turbine into a 95-foot highway experiment. One uses a 16 by 16 military platform to keep strategic weight moving when the ground stops behaving like a road. And the final machine in this lineup rolls in on wheels, then rises over the job site with up to 1.65 million pounds of lifting authority hanging from its steel frame. This is not a strict ranking. It is a curated escalation list built around machines that kept growing in purpose, weight, and mechanical arrogance until the word truck started sounding too small. By the end, a normal pickup will feel like a lunchbox with tires. The M25 Dragon Wagon was not built for comfort, speed, or anything as polite as highway freight. It was built for war. During World War II, the United States needed a machine that could recover damaged tanks, stuck armored vehicles, and military equipment too heavy for ordinary trucks to touch. That machine came in the form of the M26 tractor working with the M15 trailer. Together, they created a battlefield recovery system on wheels. This was not a tow truck. A tow truck rescues a car from a ditch. The Dragon Wagon was designed to pull steel armor out of mud after the battlefield had already tried to bury it. And this is where amateur truck talk usually collapses. Horsepower is not the main language here. Torque is. Traction is. Gearing is. Winch control is. A recovery truck does not win by sprinting. It wins by making dead weight move 1 inch, then another inch, while the ground fights back with every pound of mud underneath it. Its 6x6 drive system was the fingerprint. 6 driven wheels, solid axles, heavy leaf springs, recovery winches, low-speed control. Every part of it pointed toward one idea: grip first, speed last. That is why the Dragon Wagon earns the opening slot. It does not shock with luxury. It does not seduce with chrome. It opens the list with pure military function under pressure. The contradiction is brutal. It looks like a truck, but its real job was to keep tanks from becoming abandoned monuments in the field. Once a vehicle is built to drag war machines back from the edge, the next escalation is not more muscle. It is stranger ambition. Ford Big Red was America looking at the diesel truck and deciding it was not futuristic enough. Introduced in 1964, Big Red was a turbine-powered highway concept built to imagine long-haul trucking through the mind of an aerospace department. It didn't carry the personality of a normal diesel rig. It carried the arrogance of a company trying to make tomorrow arrive early. At the center sat a gas turbine pushing 600 horsepower. Behind it came 2 trailers. Together, the full rig stretched past 95 feet. That is not pickup truck scale. That is not even ordinary semi-truck theater. That is a private highway experiment occupying the kind of length that makes a normal parking space look like a clerical error. Big Red was wrong in the most expensive way a concept vehicle can be wrong. A truck is supposed to be brutal, serviceable, and financially obedient. Big Red was none of that. It felt like a blank check transportation prophecy, built for an America that thought turbines might one day dominate the interstate. The sound alone separated it from the world of ordinary freight. Not the heavy diesel thud of a working tractor, but the sharper voice of a machine borrowed from another industry and forced onto pavement. And then the future refused to become normal. Big Red never entered mass production. That is the cold beauty of it. It was not a normal truck that failed to become interesting. It was an interesting truck that failed to become normal. A rolling corporate prophecy, built to make the future look inevitable, then left behind when the purchase order never became reality. It still has presence because it looks like it should have rewritten highway trucking. Instead, it became a rare mechanical ghost. But Big Red was still loyal to pavement. The next machine solves a more violent problem. Not speed, contact. The Tatra Phoenix does not win attention by screaming. It wins by having too many wheels for a normal road to feel relevant. Built by Tatra in the Czech Republic, the Phoenix can exist in extreme multi-axle configurations, including 14 by 10 and 16 by 16 versions. At that point, the truck stops looking like a vehicle and starts looking like a mobile industrial platform with a cab attached as a formality. This is where Megamass stops caring about beauty. The fingerprint is the axle count. The cab looks almost too normal, too civilized, perched on a body that stretches backward into a long sequence of tires, suspension parts, and driven hardware. A normal truck has wheels. This thing has a ground control strategy. And again, horsepower is not the soul of the story. With a machine like this, peak power is less important than contact. How many wheels stay useful when the ground twists, drops, and tries to pull the vehicle apart? How much traction remains when a cheaper truck starts lifting tires, losing grip, and humiliating itself? That is where Tatra's central backbone tube chassis enters the room. Not as brochure language, as architecture. The backbone tube chassis and independently swinging half axles allow the machine to keep more of itself connected to uneven ground instead of begging for a flat surface that may not exist. This is not cheap road thinking. This is the kind of industrial hardware you build when downtime is more expensive than over-engineering, and when a normal truck failing in the middle of nowhere becomes a financial insult. Its territory is mining, heavy construction, special transport, industrial operations, and remote regions where the road system is more suggestion than infrastructure. The Phoenix is a purpose-built Titan because the environment forces the design. Ordinary trucks are built assuming the ground will cooperate. This machine is built for the more expensive truth. The ground often does not care about your schedule. Tatra solves terrain with multiplied axles. The next machine uses traction for a colder purpose. Not survival, heavy movement. The Nicholas Tractomus, TR 10x10D. 10 is what happens when a truck stops asking what can be hauled and starts asking what can be forced to move. Built by Nicholas Industry in France, it belongs to the heavy haul world, a place where the load is not simply attached and driven away. The load is studied, the road is studied. Escort vehicles appear, routes are planned. Speed becomes a controlled procedure, not a driver's decision. That is the fingerprint of this machine. It is not just a tractor, it is a logistical event. The 10x10 drive system gives every wheel a role in the violence of low-speed movement. In this class, sports car numbers are almost insulting. Horsepower gets attention. Torque decides whether the load moves at all. Gearing decides. Axle load decides. Traction decides. Route control decides. A heavy-haul tractor does not impress by racing. It impresses by forcing mass to obey without tearing the operation apart. Mining, oil and gas, infrastructure, and large industrial projects are the natural territory here, because those industries do not move cute objects. They move components that make ordinary traffic feel like a children's parade. The Tractomas does not need a polished luxury cabin to feel expensive. The price is not in leather seats or chrome trim. The price is in the operation around it. The permits, the escorts, the route planning, the slow, controlled movement of something too serious to trust to a regular tractor. This is industrial money moving at walking speed. Visually, it has the cold presence of an industrial animal, a heavy cab, huge tires, reinforced suspension, the blunt posture of a machine that does not negotiate with weight. Its power is not theatrical like Thor 24. Its power is administrative. It makes governments, road crews, project managers, and entire routes adjust around it. That is a different level of dominance. But there is another form of dominance that has nothing to do with necessity. Sometimes the machine is not built because industry demanded it. Sometimes it is built because restraint was never invited into the room. Thor 24 is not a freight truck. It is an ego with a clutch pedal. Based on a 1984 Peterbilt 359, Thor 24 was transformed into a one-off custom creation built for shows, exhibitions, and the kind of public attention that normal work trucks never receive. Its fingerprint is brutally simple, a pair of Detroit diesel V12 engines giving the truck 24 cylinders in total. 24 cylinders. That is not a drivetrain choice. That is a declaration of war against moderation. And because Thor 24 is not a recovery truck, not a heavy-haul tractor, and not an off-road military platform, horsepower finally becomes the correct weapon. This is pavement theater. This is mechanical ego. This is where the number is supposed to be obscene. A staggering 3,974 horsepower. A tarmac shredding top speed figure of 125 miles per hour. In a truck, not a supercar, not a race prototype. A stretched Peterbilt built to turn pavement into a private stage for mechanical overkill. The entire vehicle had to submit to that decision. The chassis was stretched. The structure was reinforced. The suspension was upgraded. The hood became massive because the machinery underneath it was no longer behaving like a normal truck engine bay. Chrome, huge exhaust stacks, a classic Peterbilt cab, and a theatrical stance turned it into a rolling mechanical spectacle. Thor 24 belongs to the ego-driven excess side of megamass. It does not solve a mining problem. It does not rescue tanks. It does not carry strategic systems. Its purpose is visibility. A practical truck disappears into work. Thor 24 refuses to disappear. It announces itself like a private parade for mechanical overkill. It is not trying to be efficient. Efficiency is a middle-class concern. This machine is trying to occupy attention and burn normal taste to the ground. But chrome excess is still pavement theater. The next machine was built for a place where the environment itself wanted to erase the job. The Berliet T100 did not need a showroom. It needed a desert. Built by Berliet in France in the late 1950s, the T100 was developed for oil field work in the Sahara, where heat, sand, distance, and weak infrastructure turned transportation into punishment. This is where the machine becomes more than a truck. It becomes a physical answer to geography. The Sahara does not care about clean engineering brochures. It does not care about schedules, comfort, or the optimism of normal hauling. Out there, distance stretches everything. Sand attacks traction, heat attacks machinery, and infrastructure, when it exists at all, is not something you can casually depend on. That is the world the T100 was built to enter. Depending on version, the T100 stood over 16 feet tall, around 16 feet wide, and more than 43 feet long, with an empty weight above 50 tons. That is not a normal truck. That is industrial architecture crawling through the desert. The T100 used a Cummins V12 and appeared in layouts including 6x4 and 6x6 configurations. But the emotional center is not a clean spec sheet. It is the collision between machine and environment. A normal truck hauls cargo. The Berliet T100 confronted emptiness, heat, and sand with mass. That is why it earns its place late in the list. It carries historical weight, visual shock, and a purpose that feels almost imperial in scale. Take industrial equipment into a landscape that refuses to become convenient. This was not scale for vanity. This was scale because the Sahara does not reward small thinking. Every mile out there turns weakness into expense. A broken truck in the wrong part of the desert is not an inconvenience. It is a bill with heat, sand, fuel, labor, and lost time written into every line. The T-100 made the desert look like a job site, but the next machine pushes mobility into colder territory. Not cargo, not oil fields, strategic ground power. The KAMAZ 7850 is where the word truck begins to sound politically naive. Developed by KAMAZ in Russia as part of the Platforma O family, it was designed for heavy military applications, including the movement of large systems, strategic equipment, launchers, and loads that demand extreme off-road mobility. That is the fingerprint. This is not a truck for a warehouse. It is not a truck for a construction company. It is a military platform built around the idea that some cargo is too important, too heavy, and too strategically loaded to depend on polite roads. The configuration is 16 by 16. 16 driven wheels turn the vehicle into a moving ground system, not merely a hauler. And with a military platform like this, raw horsepower is less important than controlled force at the wheels. The diesel engine does not simply shove power through a normal drivetrain. It feeds generators. Electric motors answer at the wheels. For a giant like this, that is not a gimmick. It is control. Multiple steering wheels, independent suspension, a broad cab, massive tires, a body that looks less like a vehicle and more like a bridge that learned how to maneuver. The KAMAZ 7850 belongs near the end because it escalates the list into strategic mobility. The M25 Dragon Wagon recovered military steel. This machine was built to carry systems of military importance from the beginning. That changes the atmosphere. The truck is no longer supporting power from the outside. It becomes part of how power moves. There is no need to invent a price. No need to name a specific weapons system beyond the source material. The concept is already heavy enough. A 16 by 16 platform designed for strategic equipment does not need hype. This is not dealership power. This is state-level machinery. The kind of platform that makes ordinary commercial trucks look like disposable hardware bought by a purchasing department with no imagination. It brings its own gravity. And yet even this still remains a carrier. The final machine in this lineup crosses the border. It arrives on wheels, then stops being transportation. Megamass does not care about your textbook definition of a truck. If it rolls in on wheels, carries industrial weight, and forces a job site to reorganize around its footprint, it belongs in this lineup. That is why the Liebherr LG 1750 earns the final slot. Built by Liebherr in Germany, the LG 1750 is a lattice boom mobile crane on wheels. It does not behave like a regular truck, and that is exactly the point. A normal truck moves force from one place to another. This machine arrives at the site, establishes itself, and turns into vertical authority. It is transportation first, then it becomes infrastructure. That is the final escalation. The Dragon Wagon drags tanks. Big Red imagines a turbine future. Tatra multiplies axles. Tractomas controls impossible hauling. Thor 24 turns ego into hardware. Berliet pushes through the Sahara. KAMAZ carries strategic military weight. The LG 1750 changes the argument entirely. It does not simply move something heavy. It positions itself where industrial work becomes impossible without lift, reach, planning, prepared ground, and a trained crew. And then comes the number B, rated up to 1.65 million pounds of lifting capacity. Not one truckload, not one oversized component. 1.65 million pounds, hanging from a machine that first had to arrive on wheels and then become a crane. The setup still matters. Boom configuration matters. Counterweight matters. Ground preparation matters. But the number does not ask for permission before it hits. That is not a casual brag. That is a warning label made of steel. The blueprint is pure industrial authority. Multiple steering axles, high-drop pneumatic suspension, automatic transmission, a wheeled carrier underneath a lattice boom crane structure. Once configured for the job, it belongs around wind farms, refineries, bridges, and major industrial installations. Places where the work is too heavy, too high, or too unforgiving for ordinary equipment. This machine does not need a fake record claim to feel colossal. The real shock is functional. It can travel like a road machine, then dominate a job site like temporary steel architecture. The ground has to be prepared before serious lifting. The crew has to be trained. The plan has to be correct. Because once a machine like this is handling industrial weight in the air, casual mistakes stop being mistakes. They become disasters. Visually, it is the final insult to normal trucking. Wheels below, crane structure above, a road-going carrier that arrives as one thing and becomes something far more intimidating once assembled. That is why it earns the final slot. Not because it is a pickup with more power, not because it is a semi with more chrome, but because it takes the idea of a truck and forces it to serve a larger industrial empire. These 8 machines matter because ordinary infrastructure had to surrender to their weight, their purpose, and their industrial authority. So choose your side, the 24-cylinder pavement ego of Thor 24, or the vertical dominance of a mobile crane rated to lift 1.65 million pounds. Subscribe to Megamass for the next escalation of machines too heavy, too expensive, and too dominant to be explained politely.